Right, this is going to be another episode of the Best Damn League Show period, which this week I just decided randomly to include the word period, and I won't do the whole rant again about Americans and full stops. But anyway, it is technically supposed to be period at the end, even though we just said the Best Damn League Show. And does it matter anyway? What's in a name, as Shakespeare said? No, I'm just shamelessly cribbing really cliched Shakespeare quotes. Our guest for this one, who will be the person who will give the points that aren't just about vitality and heretics on the show, just so everyone knows how the structure works. Because Peter, every week, we all know Crowbar's all of it is actually someone who, one, I have had on shows in the past. He was on Elitist United, you might remember. And he actually has his own notorious past, if you don't know him. Because somehow, Dan, you must have some crazy bad luck in your life, man. I don't know what you did in a past life. Because you actually were part of two of the craziest, clusterfuck teams to ever be around the LEC. If people don't know, he was one in the real, I'm talking about the real fucked up Origin, the one where Expect's mum wrote all that shit on that blackboard or whatever. He was in that team, and then after that, he came back, and imagine climbing out of the Bane pit, Peter, right, finally, I'm back in LEC. And then what team was he on? Remember that Misfits team, guys, where they had an amazing EU Masters team? So they were like, let's just destroy that EU Masters team piece by piece by making them basically. But I always say it's like drowning them in the deep end of the pool. It's like, right, what we're going to do is we're going to play them one at a time, but with other players they've never played with, and got and blew the whole squad up. So you were part of two of those. So man, alive, you've been through the trenches, Dan. You've been through the trenches.
Yeah. Darkness is my ally, or whatever that Bane code is.
I also did want to ask as well a random detail, because I know how many people, I know it's not that big as for Europeans, but for Americans it was always huge that all the American League of Legends people are massive weeaboos and all into anime. So has it also ruined your life that there's that anime now called Dan to Dan or whatever that they all, I bet do people just talk about that all the time, mate? Do they bring it up to you?
No, not at all. The only things that I get is apparently there's I think there's a Chinese AD carry who stole my name and is also called Dan.
Brilliant.
And then
okay.
And then there's an orc called Dan Gaming, and then there's a European jungler who's also called Dan, and then there's Dan Noodles. So those are
can't get a break. Yeah, okay.
Dan, we can't find you on Games of Legends, and then they always quote this Chinese AD carry, and I'm just like, yeah, you know what, whatever. I'm just a random nobody. It's all good.
Yes, but after all his experiences there, he is now head coach of Solari. If people don't know, is one of the teams in the LFL. Now the LFL, admittedly, not as good at the moment, but although here's the thing. Even though people tell me the LFL sucks now, I will just point out that is because about 3/4 of it got promoted. It's basically the LEC now, you idiot. So whatever, it is what it is. What you can say, Peter?
Yeah, I was going to say currently coaching Solari, one of the I'd say probably top 4 teams. Didn't qualify for EMEA Masters Winter because they got a bit unlucky. They had to play IJC, EC Japan.
The one that was made it quite far. Yeah.
But for people that follow LEC, I think it's you guys have Marcoon and Mercer. And Kreis? Yeah. Is Kreis on your team? Yeah, Kreis on your team, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And then for AD Carry, takes that. A guy that has the potential to be LEC one day. So we'll see. But yeah, very, very fun team to watch. We'll definitely want to... Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. And we have DKL Mid, who's kind of like the French star. So, just a complete roster.
Okay. Right, so Dan, we actually want to know now, unlike all your past, what is good in the LEC? What do you actually like about what's going on at the moment? What's your point you're going to take for the first one?
First thing that I like about the LEC is that I think you can really see what culture... Okay, so I've got this take where the culture actually defines the greatness of an org. Okay. Because I think that there's a lot of orgs that, you can just slap the wallet at it and then you have a good team for 1 year. Mini Chupax, or I guess Attila at the time, Jack Troll, and then that Gilead's team that kind of
Vitality.
With cannon. Yeah. And then no jab at Vitality, but that team has always kind of is always notorious for spending and having outrageous contracts.
Sure, yeah.
They are I love Neo to death, so I don't want to talk too poorly about it, but that orc just has culture problem,
But I know what you mean, because people always make it sound they're buying all players like Real Madrid. It's no, not like Real Madrid, more like Chelsea or Everton or something. They're not even fucking winning. The teams are, at least Real Madrid's good when they buy all the players. This team just buys super teams every 2 years, it feels like.
Which I think is super sad, because I like some of the people in the org.
Right.
But then when I looked when I look at the team, and like even when I was playing, I was looking at the team, and I was by no means great at my time. I was like fine, like kind of like middle of the barrel, bottom of the barrel, kind of like that kind of player. But even then, I looked at him and I was like, this is, I mean, I'm not even stressed when I go on stage, and I feel like nowadays it's kind of it's kind of the same. Whereas if you look at longevity and you look at what teams are always good, like I don't even think that G2's spending was like outrageous. I don't know.
No, as
Peter,
far as I know, they've been fairly
like,
reasonable last few years. Yeah.
Yeah, but like, why do these teams always do well? Always, and like also KC. I think it's like Fnatic, G2, KC. I think you can really see that over time. Those are the teams that always do good. There's not a single season where they are completely trash. Like, let's not look at G2 right now. Their past series was definitely questionable. The game 2 and 3, but like. It doesn't matter, like they're always good. Like I will never count them out on any like international event because they always have this sort of like system in place which they can probably use. And I don't know like what it is, but I really think that kind of like shines through.
Okay, that's a good opening gambit. What do you think, Peter? I'm sure you must agree with this, but fucking culture is the most important thing in the whole.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't necessarily agree that I agree with all the culture for the teams that you mentioned, but I would say that when we won, so I think culture is important. But I think also financial backing is important. And I would say it's not just raw money. It's like the amount that, once you have a team that is winning, we used to call it Fnatic bucks when we won Splice. There's like Splice. So there's an exchange rate, right? Between like Splice bucks and Fnatic bucks. So how much do you have to pay if you're on Splice versus Fnatic? Is it 1.5 times? Is it 2 times? Is it things like this? So if you're an org like Fnatic, for instance, who I'm pretty sure Fnatic are the high spenders on players in the league, but they also have Fnatic bucks, right? Because you're on Fnatic, you can use the fact that the history of Fnatic to be able to kind of outspend another team that will pay the same amount as you, right? So
you can contract Nemesis for 3 years for like 3 raisins and a
exactly
and
right?
a box of matches,
And I think that so I agree with you a lot on G2. I agree with KC. I think BDS another one who like they always outperform what you would expect on that team, but I put an asterisk by Fnatic because I think that once you're in a winning position, it's very, very hard to fuck it up. Like the only like.
Okay, maybe Rogue would disagree, but keep going.
Well, sure, but Rogue would never at the level of Fnatic.
No,
like,
true. That's true. That is true. True. Okay.
But it's possible to fuck it up. Like TSM had like the biggest bucks. Like true, TSM, you could get paid 30% of what another org was paying you, and people would go to TSM, and they managed to fuck it up. But I would say that Fnatic are an org that I think invest a lot in players. They go with players first, and then they worry about culture later. But I agree with you on G2 and KC, and I think that when we see orgs building now, you see, I think a lot of the teams that are more, I'm going to call them, have more sophisticated team building. They incorporate their academy teams and things like this are going now for culture. I'd say maybe this is I have to bring up my Heretics point. Maybe this is a lesson the Heretics learned. They tried for 2 years to just buy the biggest superstar team they could, and this year it's very clearly a culture project, right? So I agree with you. I don't know what that means for the future though, because here's my question to you, which is how do you break into that top 3 if you are, let's say, Rogue, let's say a new org comes into the league. Okay, hypothetically, let's say a new org buys Rogues. Not that I know anything that's going on behind the scene.
Imagine a really big one from CS, maybe. I know, let's get crazy.
Yeah, just hypothetically, a Na'Vi or something comes into the league. What do you think that a Na'Vi coming into the league would need to do to be able to compete with, like, say, a G2 or Fnatic or KC? Because KC obviously can get a lot of the top rookies. They'll often get a top first choice of the rookies. G2 will often get first choice on any player, and Fnatic can outpay anyone else, either in raw money or in Fnatic bucks, right? So if you're like a Na'Vi coming in, how do you kind of break into that top 3 and be competitive?
I mean, I think I'm even going to give you an example. Do you remember when Movistar KOI entered with their full Spanish roster, and everyone was like, "That's trash, horrendous, the 8th place team." and then they just kind of like did what they thought was best. They really believed in their players, and I mean, I'm gonna get all sappy right now, and I'll like you know, like, but if you really like very oftentimes Europeans, they try and just like look at LCK and like, what's the best way to play League of Legends? Chovy does this, and then you're like, man, you're not Chovy. Stop trying to be Chovy. You're gonna be absolutely honking if you're if trying to be like him. So why not just kind of just like put 5 people together that really really believe in like each other and what they do, kind of like play their own play style, and then actually have a coach that like knows what he's doing. Because I think Melzet is actually a good coach from everything that I've heard and from everything that I've seen. So I like rookies and stuff, like you just get 5 people with potentials, one guy that knows what he's doing. I'm not sure who the assistant coach is or like was that year, but like whatever they've done a good job, you know, because that bot lane is like very good. I think the top laner is a bit mental with his picks, but I think it's just quite solid, and you have like one foundational piece, Alyoya, that you can like build around. Like if I go back to my year with Misfits, I would have, like, if you would have fired it, like that, they ended up firing everyone except me. They should have, if they wanted to fire someone, they should have fired everyone except leader, and then like built around him.
Sure.
You know, like kind of breaks my ego, but I think that's like a similar thing on like how to like build a roster. You know, just because like we had success as well. You know, like maybe not as much as like others, but I think it's just about just finding 5 people that like have a goal together. And I mean, sometimes it's gonna be awful, right? So there's always some risk involved, but I think most importantly, if you really want to build a good roster and stuff, I think that oftentimes people look at the players, whereas I think often more so you need to look at staff and coaches, because if like in a lot of these like big football teams and stuff, you actually have staff, coaches and stuff. And like if you read the book Legacy, but it's about the All Blacks, the
rugby team, right? Okay, New Zealand rugby team.
The rugby team. Like I don't know what their score is, but outrageously good.
They've been very successful in such a small country for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and they just like talk about like, you know, like sweeping the floors and like after a game just like staying humble, and everyone kind of just like, everyone kind of like does their own thing. Yeah, and that's built in through years and years of like coaching and training and like habits and stuff. And I feel like there was one year, I think, was it Yamato that was coaching KC, and it didn't go that well or something?
Yeah, it was last year, at the beginning of last year.
Yeah, and it was like kind of like bad, and I felt like bad for him that they like fired him after, what was it, like 6 months? I'm like, bro,
after one split.
Give him 6 months.
It was one split.
It was like 2 months. It was 2 months.
I was like, man, I feel so fucking bad, you know, like this guy builds a roster. I mean, like sometimes things don't go well and they get rid of him, and it's like this guy doesn't even get time to like build what he wants to build. And a lot of these teams, they're like, everyone's so fast to like, it doesn't work, just get rid of absolutely everyone. Which is actually, I'm gonna go on a bit of a segue here, but I think I should respect SK for that. I think Crepo is actually trying to do something like this. I was hoping that they do better this year, because I think that they actually have like a coach that like has a vision and stuff. So they're trying to do something like this. Sometimes it doesn't work out, unlucky, but I think that's kind of like the pathway you have to take.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to hire the coach, make sure you back his project, right? I think that that this is one of the reasons again why I put the asterisk by Fnatic, because I don't forget that Fnatic 3 years ago or 2.5 years ago, like they promoted Crusher from their academy team and they fired him within one split. And then they bought a Nightshare, and then like they didn't give him like the backing to build his project, right? Like, so I think I agree with you that it's good to have a good centerpiece to the project, but it's also, we're beginning to see a more like sophisticated approach towards building coaching staffs. And I think that this is one area where Mad Lions, KOI have a big advantage, because they have Till Verdeman, who is like probably, I would say, the best GM in LEC when it comes to kind of this kind of team building, staff building, right? Because he kind of has a good idea over what a staff needs. And obviously he worked with me, he worked with Mac when Mac was the head coach of Mad Lions, and you know, with Melzet, they have a good variety of coaches. They have Zeph, who was on LDLC, and they have Hansen, who have very different personalities and different skill sets. I've interviewed all of those coaches that are currently on KOI, and they have different ideas towards the game and different ideas towards how the coaching staff should work, but there's clearly a very big hierarchy, and it's not a case of the coaching staff is fragmenting. It's a case they're working all together under the leadership of Melzet. But clearly, having people that have slightly different ideas to you is a good thing to have in a coaching staff if it doesn't fragment your team, because it exposes you to new ideas and forces you to innovate, right? And that is, yeah, I just think as a coach, like probably the best years that I've had as a coach for my personal development are when I've had like people in my staff who fundamentally disagree with me on parts of the game. So like Splice 2019 with Duke and I have like fundamentally different ideas over how a team should be run and over how a team should play the game, but we were able to kind of discuss it in productive means that I think it was good for me. I don't know how good it was for him, but definitely it helped me a lot, and Mac as well. Obviously a coach, I think you worked with Mac like in Millennium way back in the day, right?
I gave him his first job in Origin, I remember.
Oh, Origin. It was Origin. Okay.
Yeah. We don't speak about those times. Work improvement motivation team, yeah.
But same thing, right? Like the difference I think between work, I would say that as a coach, I developed a lot in Splice because I had two like assistant strategic, whatever you want to call them, coaches under me who would like challenge me every single day. But on the other teams that I've been with, especially in NA, like the idea that you can challenge your head coach in North America is like, people will they'd rather just shit talk you behind your back or like say other things rather than making it like aggressive thing face to face in a staff meeting. I think this is a European culture thing, actually. I think it's a very, very Dutch thing that I've noticed when I've worked with Dutch coaches. Like they're never afraid to go and tell you, and this is something that Mac and Duke were very good at, like, you shouldn't have done this. Like, I think that you undermined me here, or like, I think that you fucked up here, or I think I need more from you in this point. And having those discussions, we had some of the most hostile staff meetings I can ever imagine in 2019. Okay. And they were really, really hostile staff meetings. But I felt that as a coach, I developed a huge amount as a result of it. And I think it's the same kind of thing. People have this idea that you can have hostility between players in a team, and it's good to bring out conflict within a team for the players. But I think it also matters for the staff as well. Yeah. So yeah.
I will talk about NA for like a minute because I was coaching 100 teams for like 2 years, right? And they, right now head coach is Golden Glue, but mostly there were European coaches then because it was Kaz who was there for like a couple of months, and then afterwards it was Nookdog, and then there was me and it was Kire, and like there were a lot of like European coaches, and then Reapert, and Reapert's like another like wild case.
It's
like
really
this
blunt
guy
as well, yeah, sure.
Yeah. This guy doesn't give a fuck, like it's good. And like I actually think NA players like the European forwardness, because
really?
I remember,
right.
Yeah, or at least in the our team was Double Lift, Bjergsen, Closer, Tenacity, and Busio, who are all like pretty European minded. Like let's put it that way, So like I remember like the players were like, yeah, I think we should do this, and then Nookdog's like, no, you just do it this way, and then everyone just does it that way, and they're like, so why? Just no, it's just not good. And then afterwards, he just looks to me as like, the players are just stupid. We just do this. I'm like, okay, like it's, and then just the players love that kind of like, okay, like low level players, they're drawn towards like just sheer confidence, but Nookdog is very confident,
sure.
But he's also really, really smart about the game. Like I've never met someone as smart about the game as him, and they just loved it, So I actually think that, just like NA segue, but I think like European coaches in NA just do extremely, extremely well. Like they, or maybe it's just a Nookdog and like a Mythy thing, but like, they're just like so smart about the game, and it's like so funny to work with them. And all the players are just like, I'll do whatever you tell me. Whereas in Europe, it's like you tell a player something and they're like, why?
Yeah, that's true.
Why do I have to do this? And you're like, all right, let me just bring my list of fucking arguments and just like, just go read it out. Just try and find a way. Oh, here are 7 clips of Chovy doing it. And then it's like, yeah, but I still think it's bad. Whereas in NA, you just tell them like, you're stupid, just go do this. And they're like, yes, sir, I'll do it. So yeah. bit
By
of a
the way,
culture difference.
that actually makes me think, though, to tie back into the point, that actually that sounds like 100 Thieves understood the culture of their team then, because I have to say, that actually sounds like an outlier experience, mate. Most of the people I've heard of who went to NA teams like the LCS, etc., they found like the opposite. Like, people couldn't handle if you were like too blunt with them, or if you didn't like essentially, as far as I know, like, it's, you know, like the fucking famous term called a compliment sandwich, where you're supposed to like compliment, then criticism, then compliment. In America, it's like a fucking compliment Big Mac, mate. You have to put like even more in there just to tell them one thing they did wrong. So I think in this vibe, one, it sounds like 100 Thieves just found the right players. Like, obviously, I'm assuming Doublelift and Bjergs just want to win, and they're like fucking probably sick of all the LCS bullshit. And then also, there's the fact that I do think it probably helps if you are literally Nuke, Duck, or Mithy. Like, they're legendary players. Like, try doing that if you're like fucking Peter and you just walk in the room, you know. Let's see then if the guy likes you being all harsh and, you know, fucking.
Ouch.
You know, listen, you were never a legendary choker in the LEC, Peter. You never did that.
I mean, what I will say is that there was one thing, for instance, like I can maybe talk about one thing with Inspired, which is that one argument I would have consistently with Inspired when I was coaching him in NA is the whether when you're farming a Raptor camp, whether that counts as being on mid wave before a dragon, right?
Okay, this is my proximity. Okay,
this is one thing. For like an entire year, I would argue with him, and like I used to think, okay, there's no winning this argument with Inspired. And now he's on FlyQuest and he does it every single time. And now I think, like, before it was debatable because he was always really smart early game.
Okay.
But then he had this like kind of flaw in the mid game where he would over farm instead of being on the waves consistently. And clearly the style of coaching I was using was not able to convince him that this was the right way to play. But now he's with Nuke Duck on FlyQuest, and clearly if Nuke Duck is having this kind of argument with him, it's either he's had an epiphany or Nuke Duck's managed to get through to him, but now he's on midwave all the time, and he's now, I would say, the undisputed best jungler. But I think the reason why he's the best jungler in the West is because he's literally fixed this one part of the game, and you know I couldn't do it, so maybe Nuke Duck was better with that type of player than me. So that's what I was.
What I appreciate about that is the way that, like, one, I have heard Nuke Duck as a mid laner, it definitely broke a lot of junglers, and then two, I like the way in this analogy you even then made like, and now he's the best jungler. Like, yeah, just do what the fucking mid laner says. I also appreciate the way he was doing some sort of weird like bureaucratic argument, or it sounds like almost like how they do like zoning laws in cities. Like, well, I'm sort of near the midwave, aren't I? Like, you know, I'm just above it in that little cubby. Like, what are you talking about, you lunatic? No. Like,
I mean, I think that the best players, they have like a bullshit filter, you know?
Right.
It's like coach is gonna say something and you're gonna believe about like 80%, and then I think the best players, they just kind of like, okay, he's talking, okay, that's good stuff, okay, whatever he's saying now is like complete dog shit. Okay, I'm just gonna filter it out, and he's gonna say, yeah, sure, I'll do it, and then you just keep doing like your old thing anyway. So I feel like, I mean, that's just part of being a good player.
By the way, look, I won't mention names. Some of them are quite toxic people. Some of them were just harmless people. I will say there is a secret which absolutely does ruin all coaching concepts in League of Legends, which is, remember, in League of Legends, there's no time out and there's no way to talk to players once the game's begun, right? Coaches, I'm not saying this right now. I would never say this out loud. But if you're a pro player watching, you know you can just basically like do what you just said. Just agree, nod. Yeah. To make sense, do whatever you want in the game. Like, he can't stop you at that point. You're already in the game. And also, unless you're some player he can bench, like, believe it or not, he just has to work out like, fuck, how do I get through? You have to be like, Peter, how do I get through to this guy? Like, that's the world you're going to put your coach in. By the way, to come back to the original point, I actually do think as a broad point, it's a very good point to make, because I think there's like two ways you can break it down. It depends what you, I noticed by culture, you don't just mean have the best player and the best team and win as the culture. That is one form of culture, but that is obviously what people like G2 have tried to do. They've tried to establish it that if you join their team, you eventually become a champion. They're only looking for champions. If you don't make it, you don't meet certain grades, and you'll be replaced, etc. By the way, that culture does literally come from when Carlos was there. People might not want to say it now and might want to ignore it and detach it from the past. But in the same way as, like, for cultural reasons now, you can't ignore like the history of the place you are in, etc., because it informs it. I do think that is actually a very very relevant point. Here's what I would say about that, which is if you're talking about actually successful teams, there's different types of culture, as we just addressed. One thing I would say is very underrated is, I had to learn this the hard way in the esports industry, which is you think it's cynical to think to yourself, like, oh, that person's an idiot, so they probably would like do a bad job hiring someone. That is true. That is literally, that razor literally works. Like, here's how the best orgs work. They actually have really good people at the top of the org. By the way, way away from any player. They're not telling any player how to play the game, but the people are the executives and the owners. If those people, I think that's where the culture begins, by the way. That's why I reference people like Carlos. Whatever your mentality is, by the way, if you go and look at the orgs, I won't name names, but put it this way, there are some American orgs where their culture, I can tell you, if you were actually to like give them a truth serum and make them answer you, would just be, we're just about being a giant sports team that makes loads of money from sponsorship. They wouldn't tell you we're about like being the best in the game, or we're the most diligent, or that, like I said. And by the way, they've achieved those ends. They have like, 5 times the sponsorship of Fnatic or something like that. Again, not naming any names, you could probably guess who I mean by that. So there's the orgs like that, but then there are also the orgs that want to win. And I can tell you what happens is, this applies not just to esports teams, by the way, it's basically all companies, is people who are bad executives, like they themselves have, let's just say bad in the sense of they don't agree with our reasoning as to why you would want to be an executive. Like, they just want to have a lot of money or have power over people, etc. I can tell you, unfortunately, it might sound cynical, but like people who are corrupt, for example, will tend to also hire people who are corrupt. I know that sounds mad, but it's because they don't want to like get exposed for being corrupt, for example. They want people who will go along with their plans. They want people who will, in exchange for money or power, give up what they want to. That actually trickles down, in my opinion. So if you go and look at the best orgs, I think they start with good execs who hire people who then can run the org like general managers, who then hire good coaches, who then hire good players. And I think it actually does trickle down like that. I think it's very rare you're ever going to get a case where the people at the top in this chain are idiots, but somehow it's like you trip over and you get a good team. Like, maybe, we might have even referenced Smogs earlier, maybe that can happen every now and then. You get a good core of players or you get a good player. But the key thing I think this topic is about is, how do you refresh your roster? Because what shows the culture to me, mate, like you're talking about here, is when you refresh the roster and there's almost no one left from the last team, if you then still end up with a team that still has like your sort of core values as a squad, that's how you know there's culture in that team. That's not just a team, and it's not just coming from the player, how good he's at clicking the mouse, is it? So I do think that's a big deal. Like, as much as people might not want to know, even things that you might perceive as negative about the top people can be positive. Like, I'll give you a mad one. I can tell you, as someone who knows Carlos, one of the reasons why he was such a lunatic or how he ran G2, but it was mega successful, is because, yes, he was a very egotistical person. So that means, by the way, when G2 loses, he doesn't want that. He wants to be able to talk shit to all the other org owners. So it actually, believe it or not, would make him super motivated to go out and upgrade that player, or go and get like a super player from Fnatic or sort of break their squad or something. In a weird way, like it all flowed down from that. By the way, I could even throw this out there, up to him if he wants to say anything about this. I would just say, from my investigation 2 or 3 years ago into Evil Geniuses, this is why I knew Evil Geniuses was fucked, Peter. Because the joke is, you know this, I actually came from the CS side where they had worse problems. But what I quickly found out was, every problem, if you tracked it back up the org, just went to the same people, and the same people were making the same mistakes in the same stupid way. By the way, themselves hiring people that then didn't make sense to do other jobs that didn't make. And the whole thing was like a cluster. And the joke was, you could always see in the server they were failing. But like I say, you could always track it back to like, but why is that player here? And why don't we sign a different player? Why do we coach them this way? Why do we bring the players up this way? And I actually think it all came back to the people at the top of the org. It's actually why, if you ever seen some of these orgs, it is when you just change the top people that suddenly eventually all the dominoes fall into place, and they either fix the org or they become way worse. Obviously, you can go both ways on that one. And then lastly, I'll just say this. I actually think you make a very good point, Peter, about the Fnatic box. That is one thing I have always thought was really unfair, is when a fan acts, because remember, they still don't know the salaries that every player makes. They still act like every fucking 10 GM sits down in the off-season with a totally blank screen, like, hey, I think I'll take caps and hands up. Like, you don't even have that choice, you idiot. There's about 2 teams can even do that. Like, the joke, we had an episode a few weeks back, Dan, where we where we had Youngbuck, and he speculated that since Caps' contract was up, like, maybe Fnatic could sign him. Spoiler, in that episode, we didn't speculate the other 8 teams signing him. It wasn't even on the table. He would only have gone to about 1 or 2 other orgs, wouldn't he? Like, by the way, for this exact reason, it's not even about money. You could be one of those mad orgs that comes in, maybe Falcons buys in. He might not join that team. He probably wants to join a team with like a winning culture, top people in the org. By the way, so here's the last thing I want to say, which is, I do think there's one way around this, which allows you to get to that status, which actually you guys sort of almost backdoored you into. It's the RL angle. I think the angle that can get you almost like a Fnatic status, where you don't have to have the same money, but you just get the player, is if you, and I think the two obvious examples is Carmine Corp and BDS. If you have an academy/ERL team, though, and you have that player on that team and he has success, they have seemed to like bond their players in a way I haven't seen from other teams around that level. I do think the other teams in that system, you master, you just go to the highest bidder, you go where you want. Somehow teams like Carmine Corp and BDS have created like an internal team culture and a fan culture where people actually want to be loyal to them. I think it's kind of mad personally, because people are talking about loyalty to these teams, by the way, as if it is like Caps and you've won like 11 championships in G2. Like, it's only a bloody ARL, but I tell you what, it works. I actually get the vibe it does. I mean, by the way, if you remember the rumours in that off-season, everyone thought that Paris guy was going to about 4 different orgs. He ended up still in BDS. Like, it actually worked out. So, no, I think that's an interesting angle. I do think it's an interesting angle. I think that might be the way to battle it, because if you think about it, KC and BDS, in theory, some of this talent probably should have gone in the past years to other teams. So you wouldn't get to keep Calist if this was like 5 years ago in LEC. Come on, surely beyond Fnatic or something, right?
You want to go first?
I mean, I do actually want to add one thing on top of it. And I think that when we go back to the owners, I mean, I think when you look at the owners and the owners are famous as well, it really helps as well, because there's no better culture building and there's no better way to get a good roster than winning. Yes. That's like so if, okay, like let's say Wild World, you know, Los Ratones wins EMEA. I don't know how, don't ask me, you know. Casual, huge streamer, you know, biggest like outreach in like league so far.
For sure.
This guy makes an LEC team. I mean, I can guarantee you there's going to be people that want to join that org more so than anything else. Except like maybe like G2 and KC, you know? Yeah. So, I guess it's something along those lines.
No, by the way, it wouldn't even be. I know what you mean. It would actually be comparable. That's another reason back in the day people wanted to join TSM if you're a more modern fan. Because if you joined, you instantly became like 5 times more famous and you had all stream viewership. I'd imagine that'd be why people even want to join Lost Ratones. They'd imagine I get to like be associated with all these giant names and Cadrel. Like, that's a fucking great reason on its own.
I mean, I'm very sure Cadrel just like set them down and he was like, okay, some of you guys are at the end of your careers. There's not really much left for you in League of Legends. You're still good players. The only way that you're gonna get any success after like playing is just get your own brand. If you don't get a brand, you're gonna be working at fucking McDonald's, you know. So
true.
No, I mean it's true, you know. It's
I'm laughing because I think there's some players on that team maybe, but I'm just imagining him having that conversation with Nemesis and imagining how that would go down. I'm sure he found a way to appeal to like some of the different players.
I mean, okay, like let me be real. Like some of those players still have insane talent, but once you step out of the LEC, it's very, very hard to go back. I'm just saying, like I don't know what the percentage is, but it's really, really low.
No, for sure. By the way, one last thing I'll say as well. I actually had one last point I was going to make. It's just an abstract point, which is I also would say this is actually a secret to life itself, in my opinion. Look, I'm a boomer. I can say these things now, which is that I'll make it really funny. I'll give you a random example from the Bible. That's right. Lock the doors, everyone. It's time for my sermon. No, here's the reason why, right? Because there's actually a point in the Bible, if people don't know, it's in the New Testament, where when the Apostle Paul is going from town to town to town, he's meeting all these different like towns of people who are basically like, I think they're Greek Christians or something at the time. And each different town he writes a letter to. And he's sort of like, it's almost like he's doing the Nuke Duck review of their town. Like, right, here's the good news and the bad news about your town. And one of them, basically, the story goes that it's like this, I forget what the name of it is. I'm not that fucking OP on that shit. But basically, there's one where his rebuke of this town isn't, you're really good or you're really bad. He actually rebukes them for being lukewarm. He says, and the saying goes, you are like lukewarm water that I want to spit out of my mouth. Because the premise goes, technically the worst water is lukewarm water. If it's really cold, it's refreshing, it's lovely. If it's really warm, it's awesome. Yeah, the worst water is the one that's like right in the middle. Because it's all like, there's something, it's not quite one thing or the other. What I'm getting at here is this. I actually do think, to tie it back in, you don't have to just be successful. I actually think a mistake in esports, by the way, which at the moment is an entertainment industry. It's not actually about like sports and stacking championship. We're not at that point yet. A mistake has been when you've had leagues where all 10 teams are trying to basically be like Manchester United or something. Everyone can't be Manchester United in this analogy. In fact, I would even say the career of Peter Dun shows that you want to have different types of culture too. Like, here's another reason, by the way, to join a team, mate. What if the team that you're joining, Peter, is a team where the whole org has a history of like promoting rookies, working with rookies, developing them? That's a great reason to join a team too. Like, maybe I would join that team over G2 where I know I get benched in like 2 splits if I come last or something like that. That's another reason to do it. So I also think, in life, here's the secret, is to just, the reason why people say be yourself is because when you actually are quite strongly whoever you are, it will both repel and attract people. There'll be some people who won't fuck with it, by the way, and they'll be completely away from you. But by the way, you'll find out those are the people you didn't want to be around anyway. Like, they wouldn't vibe with you. But also, it will do the opposite thing. It will attract people towards you who are like you and who vibe with what you stand for. So I also think you can have teams based on things like that. Like, we're the team that develops people. We're the team that are loyal to people. I think these are great values to have too. They don't have to always just be pure winning.
And I mean, like, just to go back to your Carlos point, like, I think that the thing about Carlos on G2 is that his approach was always, we are going to win no matter what, right? And you mentioned it from players,
yes,
but also, you know, there was G2 were never afraid to bend the rules, like never. If they like in that era of G2, if like, I've got to be very careful about what I allege here, but if there was, like, you know, if you could have a pool party and meet people, you know, or like discuss people's future or things like this, and in certain situations, you know, it was never something that they were afraid to do if it meant that they could win. And obviously, like, somebody like me would have been a shit coach on that G2, right?
Yes.
Like, it's just a different cultural norm.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was very clear. What I would say about Carlos, like, I don't talk about current day Carlos, but like the Carlos back in the day, he was very clear. Like, you join G2, we will win no matter what, and we will use no matter what means we can possibly do to get that win. Okay?
Yes.
So I'd say first, and I think that they were always very clear on their identity, and they never.
By the way, I'll even add in as well, Peter, that's even an underrated, attractive quality. It might not sound like it because you think of all the players in history who've complained about people not being loyal to them, or let's just say players who got benched when they thought they were going to be there for 2 or 3 years. I made that quite obvious. But basically, one thing that I think is underrated is this, Peter. If I joined the team you're describing, the Carlos G2 of years ago, where you're right, the whole thing was going to win the championship every year. This might sound weird, but let's say I'm someone who's perceived as a nice guy like Caps. Bro, this is brilliant. I don't have to be a dick and kick anyone. If this guy plays badly next to me, they'll take care of it. I don't have to worry about that. That's actually a good quality in itself, mate. Because there's people who wouldn't want to be the bad guy, but they want someone else to be the bad guy. That could be good. Yeah.
And I mean, I think also the consistency is what matters, right? So, like, I would say, just to go back to Mad Lions, Koi, like who is the, I don't know what his position is now, CEO or, you know, owner. I don't know what I'm not very good at titles, but chief executive, right? Like, whatever that is Adam. I can't pronounce it.
The guy who used to be with like Spice and shit, right?
Yeah, you know, he was on Splice and like he brought the team from Mati, and then he's been on Mad
Adam
Lions
Gratson or something he's called, right? Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
But the thing about him is he's very, very consistent, right?
Right.
Like his philosophy is, we invest a ton in our recruitment process. We trust our recruitment process. And then if we've hired you in the recruitment process, we give you time. And the implication being, you have time, but you better meet the objectives. But frankly, you do what you need to do. We trust in our processes to hire you. So therefore, you have the freedom to do what you want to do. And if you succeed, great. And if you don't succeed, basically you're going to be fired. And like, it was never said as explicitly as that, but you know, that as a coach is valuable, right? Because, you know, okay, I'm not going to be forced to do things in a different way. I'm going to succeed or fail on my own merits, right? And it's always very, very consistent. Now, if I pick another org, like, okay, I should name orgs, but let's say another CEO or another, that maybe wasn't as good that I work with. Sometimes those people are the ones that always want to change things, you know, because they're worried. Some owners worry too much about their own brand and how things reflect on them, you know, and they want to see, the team succeeds, that I better get my share of that credit. Sure. And, you know, we find success in one way, but I believe, because I've heard on this podcast, or I've heard from this other person over here that doesn't work for the team, but has a lot of respect. This person comes from conventional sports, and they've come and spoken to me, and they've told me that this is how things work. And sure, the team is successful already, but if you just incorporate this thing that this guy from outside the org who has no clue what the fuck you're doing day to day, if you just incorporate this, we could be 5% better, we could be 10% better. And trust me, if you do it this way, then and so it's not enough to win. You have to win using the methodology that you've been given, or else there's going to be consequences, right? And I would say is if as a player, when you're joining an org, you don't have to worry about this. But as a staff member, when I'm sitting in an interview with a CEO or GM, this is what I'm asking, right? It's like, how do you assess what I'm doing? How much freedom do I have? How much interference from outside? And I would say the orgs that succeed, generally, I felt on the orgs that I did best on, and that I felt that I could succeed most on. It was a case of, okay, this is your project. What is acceptable parameters? What funding do you need? What resources do you need? What is an acceptable goal? And the implication being, meet your goal or be fired, right? And that's great. That's great. That is the best thing you can possibly ask for as a coach. The orgs that I really would hell to work on were the orgs where they promise you the world when you join. They don't give you proper clear guidelines. And then when you join, it's not enough to win. You have to win in the way that is being told. And I'm not going to name any names for that. But that's what I was saying for that.
But it is, I'll even say, since I referenced him as the example, I joked, but that actually is why, one of the reasons is when I did my investigation and asked around as to why Rogue has fucked their whole org up, is, as far as I know, believe it or not, this might sound mental because no one who's not in the industry is going to get this, but it wasn't enough to win, Peter. They had to win in a very specific way so that very specific people got credit. And even to a Reddit pleb, it was obvious that person's doing mental shit like that. Which, by the way, if you don't know, there's even an all-time great piece of advice that I always try to follow in my own life because I found it to be true, which says something like you could accomplish almost anything as long as you don't mind who gets the credit. If you understand the wisdom of that saying, that's everything in life, mate. But there's a lot of people where the opposite. I agree, mate. They want to win in their way, in their thing, and because they did it, at the end, everything has to point to them, which is no one even knows if that'll work. There's many routes to success. Right, here's the thing. Obviously, every point, there's going to be 9 of them, won't be a fucking 38-minute point or whatever. So
Holy moly.
We'll go, it's all right, it's all good. We started the show nice and broad. Now we're going to zoom in a bit. So, Peter, what good point do you have?
Okay, my good point is homestands. It's great. It was fantastic to go and see how successful the homestand at Madrid worked. From my understanding, piecing to what I've seen in interviews, it seems like Koi got to choose who they wanted to invite.
Right.
And they chose, and clearly KC weren't one of those teams, because I'm pretty sure they would have invited KC instead of GX. But I'm not sure why it worked like that, but it was very clear. They decided, okay, we're going to invite Fnatic, G2, GX. I will say this is a subtle flame to Heretics, because Heretics and Koi were rivals for a very, very long time in ERL, and they invited Giants instead.
So it's like we invite everyone Spanish except you, basically.
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
Which people maybe, if you don't know the law behind Spain, that's kind of insulting. But what I would say is that that firstly, homestands were great. Secondly, it was run by an org that basically understand how to run homestands. And I would say KC and Koi are the 2 orgs basically that could run a homestand really, really well, because they have experience in other games. And we got to see people in front of live audiences fucking up badly because they can't hear what's going on with the additional pressure. And it really makes you appreciate what we've lost over the years by losing this in LEC. And obviously, if you had a homestand every week, it wouldn't be as great, right? But there used to be road shows all the time back in the day, EU LCS, and I think having the outreach and meeting the fans is really, really important. And I would say that there are a lot of people that became NA LCS or LCS fans. I know because I've met them because they saw Danny's Pentakill live on in the stadium, and maybe they became disillusioned with the LCS because of later events, right? But this is how you turn a casual fan into a diehard fan, right?
So you mean the experience of being in the crowd as well as just the play on the screen, right?
Yeah, imagine you're a casual Koi fan, right? Like you watch I don't know, whatever Koi do, like they do that football, like the King's Cup and things like
Okay.
you go and watch it because you know what you buy from his like streaming or his football thing, and you like to watch his streams, and you've come to support him, and you go and watch that Koi Fnatic game 3. Holy fuck! Like you're now you have
true.
unrealistically high expectations of what league is, but you're thinking, you're always chasing that high, you know? Oh, any game could be like this. Any game could come down to the last 4 HP Nexus, you know, and that is how I think you retain the long-term fan engagement. And obviously we're an entertainment industry, and this is a good way to get new fans. And you know, worst case scenario, all of the games are dull, they end 2-0, right? And you know, you get to cheer in the crowd, right? But that's what you were getting in the studio anyway, right? But if it goes well, like it did this weekend, which went as well as it possibly could have gone, the long-term rewards are priceless. So you know, it's great that we had the homestand, got to show me a bit about some of the G2 players in front of a proper live audience, which you know, maybe it's better that they know these things now instead of like in the championship upper bracket playoffs. But yeah, just more of these things. You know, it's a shame that we've missed out on this for like 4 or 5 years. Like it's been a long time since the road shows. They used to have the finals, but I can't remember what road shows were like 2016, no?
They used to, yeah, if you remember, they used to have like, they'd go to Spain or France or something like that. What, I think it was usually the spring split, I'm not sure, but I know it would be like once a season at minimum,
Yeah, Poland as well sometimes, and Scandinavia, yeah. But yeah, I mean...
They even had one in the UK once, remember? There was one at like fucking the O2 or something, I think, was it? There was the famous Gambit SK one where they had like all those players had to stand in because they couldn't get... I think even Heaver played. I think that's why I remember it from doing my interview with him recently.
Sure.
Right, what do you think then, Dan?
I totally agree. So first of all, whenever you go to EDC or LCS, like I'm not even gonna call the studio, it's like depressing. You're sitting there. Well, I've been there both as a coach and as a player, and it's been depressing both times. You look at it, you're sat there, like there's lights, so you can't even see anything, and then whenever you can't see anything, there's like 10 people in the crowd, maybe, or like 20 or 30, you know, and it's like, this is not really like playing in front of an audience. So from a player perspective, it's so cool whenever you like do something and you're on stage, because we were at the LFL days a couple of days ago, which was basically like same stuff. They go to the KC Arena in Paris, and there were like hundreds of people there, and like something happens on stage and everyone goes wild. And as a player, that's something, first of all, you never forget. And also just seeing it as an event is just so cool, because I don't know, like playing in that studio is just so depressing. And it's like, I might as well just be playing from home, you know? Like you get your makeup on and, you know, like everything's cool, and then you have your routine, and then you walk on stage and you're like, yeah, I'm ready. And then there's like your parents are sitting in the corner, and then, you know, like you just sat there like, this is like the only fans I have here. Whereas when we went to LFL days as well, okay, this is also part of being part of a cool org rather than being part of a not so cool org, because I have been in orgs where you have about 3 fans.
Sure.
But if you go there, and like Solari has a lot of really, really cool fans, you know, there's like hundreds of people there, and they're all screaming like your name or like whatever, and then like everyone's there. It's like, first of all, as a player, that's something you'll never forget. Like there's a lot of things in esports that you're gonna regret, but that's not one of them, you know. So yeah, I mean, this is cool, but it's only cool if you're an org that has fans. If you're an org that has no fans, it's not so cool, because then it's like, there were also orgs where we went to, and they have like 3 people waiting there for them, and it's like, yeah, I just took my pictures. It took about 3.5 seconds, and then we're out. So yeah, it's a bit of a double-edged sword, I think.
I mean, it's also fun. It's also fun, like if the fans are booing you, right? I mean, I guess Solari and KT must be. It's not. Oh, I used to love that when it was Brazil versus Turkey.
Yeah.
Like, holy moly! I used to love like the tears of the Turkish fans whenever we would. But yeah, okay, fine, fair enough. But
I'm gonna be in. As a player, I'm gonna be in my room at night with a burger, watching the fucking recap, watching Reddit, and just crying myself to sleep if that happens.
Right.
You know? Like,
okay.
So, you know, like it's not a good experience.
Okay. No, by the way, I'm with Peter. This is where actually, like, I think that is an underrated pleasure, Peter. I'm with you. It might seem like some BDSM shit, but it's actually fun to make the whole crowd boo you. I mean, I've done some classic ones in CS. I was like when they did like an ESL Cologne in like CS, a fucking German team made the final. I still flamed the fuck up and said they'd be trashed and lose. All the fans were like booing me in the arena. It was hilarious, mate. That was great. Anyway, to bring it all back on the homestand thing, what's good about this is also how the format works, Dan. I'm now going to make a bunch of negative points, even though it's Peter's good point, which is I was actually going to do this as my bad point, believe it or not, Peter, so it's okay, I can switch that, which is I was going to spin it this way, which is when I watched this like homestand, this Spanish one, the first thing I thought was, bro, if anyone thinks that like the audience doesn't affect the outcome of the game, go and watch this week of fucking LEC. Like, I saw GX play all those fucking splits in this, they're trash in the studio. They were like demons in this fucking homestand. They were like twice as good, and you could even see for real, everyone who played them just looked like half as good. Like, you could see for real the impact. This, like, one, they were clearly like living off the fucking crowd, and then two, you could see which players on the other teams, I agree, we'll maybe get to them in some of my other points, certain players who were on very big name teams did not hold up under the pressure of having a hostile crowd and the essentially what would be an away game in sports. Like, you could tell some of them had never experienced this, bro. Like, let's just say maybe even when they were in those ERLs going to stadiums, they were on the loved teams where they were getting all the praise. You could just tell. And I agree with you, Peter. I'd rather know that now in fucking partway into like spring than at Worlds, which remember, there's years like that COVID year, you only find out if you brought a rookie in. At Worlds, he's a failure. Like, even the finals are in the studio, so you never actually get to know, does this guy choke or not? So that, in theory, I'll spin it the good way though. So the good thing is you actually get to test people with that. I do think, by the way, I've changed my whole perspective on this. I actually think at this point in my career in esports, I've seen so many big tournaments. Like, I can find value in the group stage game or like, you know, like a regular season match. But the real thing we're all watching for is a playoff match in a stadium with crowd noise and excitement that goes beyond just like, what does the guy with his hands do in the server? You do want that. Like, I even have learned, I actually think there's two things that are mega underrated about why everyone always, you know, everyone, even in other games, always bigs up Counter-Strike. Like, wow, it's such a great game to watch. It's so easy to follow. I always tell people it's not just the game. There's three factors, but one of them doesn't apply to this point. One, what you're ignoring, all of you, is if you're from League of Legends, they run every fucking region like a league. And I'm sorry, leagues are, like, I follow the Premier League, mate. It's not as interesting as the Champions League, because the Champions League is like, can the team win the tournament? Premier League gets boring at certain points. There are certain times where it's interesting or certain races. There's times, by the way, if someone's 12th, it's not interesting at all. You're just in the middle doing nothing. You're lukewarm. Shitfire reference back to my own shit point about the Bible earlier, whatever, all good. So I'm making that like some deep colour I can't see earlier on the episode. But then also, there's the part where, as well as it being, so I think essentially the real reason CS is popular is because, one, it's all tournament formats. Playoffs is way more exciting than it's week 7 of another group stage game. That just doesn't get as exciting. Two, it's the fact that you have crowd noise on all the arena shit. Like, think about any great highlight in Counter-Strike you can remember. You can instantly imagine the crowd cheering when like Cold Zero does that jumping no scope, or someone when Simple does a crazy. If that was just the same play, the exact same play on your screen with all the same pixels, but no crowd noise and just the commentators like, wow, what a great kill. That doesn't hit the same way. It doesn't. We're all plebs in some sense. Like, these things like social condition of like, wow, well, the people are cheering. That does matter. Somehow that gets you hyped in a way. In fact, I think the ultimate example of this surely is how Koreans do esports. Because we don't even know fucking Korean, but we all know if you watch that broadcast, it's hype as fuck, isn't it? Where they're all like, mate, you just get hyped listening to that shit. Even though it sounds like, by the way, it does sound like absolute cancer. Like, they're just jamming the fucking mic with a million words. But hype as fuck though, isn't it? And then lastly, I also think the thing in Counter-Strike people miss is this. Because Counter-Strike is rounds, so between each round you have like a reset in a moment where you're not playing the game, that actually makes it better for the camera angle, because then when the guy with the camera comes down and you're in the spawn buying the weapon, if you see the red light come on, that's basically like, right, here's 5 seconds to do something funny for the camera. And in Counter-Strike, by the way, they are unbelievable at being entertainers if they're like veteran pros that have been in a million stage matches. So essentially, to tie that all in, actually, that's what you're seeing now. Like, listen, you can't do it in the game in League because the game's one continuous object that keeps going. And obviously you're not just talking like pauses and stuff. But the point is, you saw in this as well, another thing this allows you to do, live environment, is you can be an entertainer. You can be the guy who bigs up the crowd. By the way, think of Worlds, when Bin took off that fucking jersey on the way to the final, that was baller. That was almost as good as some of the shit he was doing in the game, mate. That got you hyped as fuck. So stuff like that I think is awesome. I think that basically when people talk about what they mean, I agree with you, Peter, it's like you said, when people talk about like the esports experience, they don't really mean the dope shit we did in the video game. Maybe to us purists, that's what they think. They also mean things things like the time in their life it was and their live experience and what it was like to wait all the hours. That's why actually Americans have nailed one thing we haven't figured out in Europe, which is they do the tailgate where you all go and you will pre-drink for hours before the match and you have the social settings. Look, spoiler, we do just pre-drink at home in Europe, but that's not like a thing built into like the official part of the culture. So I agree. I actually think this homestand was dope. The only downside to me is this, but the problem is this is more of a downside of life, not really the LEC. It is a bit weird that some teams have a home game and then some teams are just playing in the league with no home game. Like, that's a bit like, what? I mean, if we do acknowledge my first point that like the home game clearly affects you, that makes it a bit weird if you're the team that just doesn't get one. But unfortunately, as I said, that's not really the problem of the LEC, Peter. That's the problem that some people don't come from countries where we can hold the event, and some people have orgs that, as mentioned, have 2.5 fans, and that's people's mums. Like, yeah, at that point, you just shout a lot. That's the nature of entertainment business, I'm afraid. I think it's a good point, though. I think it was, by the way, if it was up to me, I mean, I even thought this when I watched this. Part of me watched. I'll tell you one quick dark secret, so we just don't have to waste our time on this. The real problem is this: as far as I know, all live events in esports lose money to run. No one's ever figured out through ticket sales how to make the money back. The sponsorship doesn't cover it. And you also want it to look dope. You don't want it to be in a really shitty venue. So you tend to pick bigger venues that like look really cool and stuff. So the problem is, essentially, I'm about to say like a naive fan. When you watch that homestand, you think to yourself, why isn't it just like this every week? But unfortunately, the reality is it can't be like that every week. Like, they actually can't run events like that, unfortunately. If people don't know, when this originally was planned, it's even where that term came from, an esports homestand in Overwatch League, the joke is actually COVID saved the Overwatch League, because if they'd have forced all the owners to run those homestands, they were going to eventually try and do it as home and away games. They all told me financially they would have just bankrupted their orgs. Like, you couldn't afford it in the end. But I do think, to tie it in, at a minimum for things like playoffs, I think this should be a must though. I think every split should have playoffs in a stadium with proper fans. If you want to do a homestand tour, that's one thing, but the idea it's just in an LEC studio, I do think that sucks. I think the idea, like, bro, especially if I think of like Caps' career, bro, like, something meant to like 75% of his titles were just in the same LEC studios, like week one of LEC. What is that? You know what I mean? It's really jarring for me because I come from Counter-Strike where, bro, you have like tier 2 events that have a massive crowd like we're talking about here. And also, to tie into the RL thing, the RLs have had this the whole time. I used to kill me, bro. The worst one ever is, at least people respect the LFL. Almost no European fans ever given respect to the Turkish league. But I've always said, yeah, but if you go watch those Turkish playoffs, they're fucking sick, bro. It's like a CS major or something. People are going crazy. And you can see there are people who live and die off that pressure for sure. Like, it gets to some... That's what I want all esports to be, in theory.
Yep. I agree.
Yeah, yep. No, go on.
You get competitive advantage, but frankly, like, if you have lots of fans, get a competitive advantage.
You deserve it, yeah. Like, on some level, you do. Yeah. Yeah, you do.
I mean, yeah, that's all. So,
yeah, I mean, honestly, nothing else to say. I agree.
Oh, fair enough. Okay.
It is what it is. Honestly, I just don't really understand what the esports like model is to even like get money, to be honest, at that point. So I don't even know how they can even afford the all these like live events, to be honest. So it's just like.
Put it this way, as far as I know, it was described to me by people who've been execs at the top level in esports as basically you almost do run the live event as part of the sort of advert that like esports is a real sport. That's actually the real reason you sort of hold the event. Because if you think about it, right, it's not even just a venue. You want it to even be famous venues like, oh, it's the O2 Arena in the UK. Oh, it's a football stadium. Like, that's even half the market. It's essentially just marketing, Dan. It's a real dark secret, unfortunately. But at the moment, I mean, there's a very obvious reason I'll just give everyone quickly, which is if you go and see Taylor Swift in concert, it's going to cost like €300. You're going to go for 2 hours and then you're going to get the fuck out the building. If you go to the same venue for LEC, it's going to cost $30. You're going to be there for 8 hours and you're going to have crazy expectations. So unfortunately, like, the costs just don't make any sense as far as I know. Like, if you know, compared to normal sports.
Were the seats even full in the during the games?
It looked like they're fairly full, right, Peter?
Yeah.
It looked like they did a good job. Yeah. Okay. I'll even say as well on that one, by the way, if people don't know, that's another area in esports as to why you've all been tricked. Because in your brain, you think, Thorin, it's not true. I've seen all these stadiums packed. Oh, don't worry. Until very recently, it was even still the trend in esports to just fill seats with people off the fucking street if you can't get. Because the worst thing ever is to have the stadium half empty. So, like, put it this way, if you know one of those famous Counter-Strike events ever is that kind of Itse one, as far as I know, until only a few years ago, they used to also run at capacity where if there was seats empty, they would just let people come in for free. because they just wanted to show bombs in seats. So, but you won't make any money off that, obviously. It's a bad business model.
but I mean, I think that there's certain orgs that will always fill a stadium. Like
Yes.
KC will always fill a stadium. Koi will always fill a stadium. I'm pretty sure Heretics would. I'm pretty sure if Solari were an LEC, but if Solari were hosting an LFL thing, then they could definitely do it.
By the way, in general, Peter, I would say that this is one area where actually we almost do need like people to get out the microscope, the magnifying glass in esports, because notice how it's just the LFL and Superliga, mate. Those leagues have just got the orgs that have figured out how fan engagement works in a way like some of the best LEC orgs never have. They really have. They're so far ahead of them, right?
Yeah,
but that's only because we actually have like owners in our like leagues, you know, like most of the good owners from LFL are actually people that are like doing content.
Yeah, that's true.
Like this, like if I look at the LEC, like I don't know any of the owners, like from like, you know, like knowing them, or like their streamers are just generally like not that super well known and stuff. And I feel like you really need like entertainers and streamers to actually make you care about the players, because the players are nowadays so busy learning the game. Also, you could put in more effort as a player to do that stuff, like me included, during the day. But like that's not really like number one priority. It's like you win, and like then no one really gives any fucks about you if you win or lose, unless you're in the like nice org. So yeah, unless you like either you teach the players how to be more, you know, like I saw like an interview or like I saw like a video of like Dana White, who was like the president of the UFC, right? He told his players, I don't give a fuck if they're booing, I don't give a fuck if they're cheering for you, just as long as they don't do the lukewarm water thing, you know?
Yes, exactly. Yes.
And it should be like the same here, you know? Either you get a great player and you tell them like, okay, you just don't have to do anything, just like play good, or you just get some like players to like make some good content and just actually be like entertaining, because like otherwise you like even I mean you're never gonna fill a stadium otherwise. Like great thing about MKOI that, you know, like great, but I don't think any of those players are particularly entertaining. They're just like there because like they have like a lot of the like they have Sky and like they've got all the like Spanish streamers there,
for sure,
from like back in the day, and eBuys.
I think Illyria is like.
Okay. Yeah. Anyway, but like the rest, like no one cares, you know. So like nothing against them, you know. No one cared about me either. It's just a reality check, you know?
No, of course. And by the way, he means obviously as players. Like obviously Merwin's entertaining as fuck, but maybe not in the way you're meaning. No, by the way, that's even one of the details. If you want to see how marketing works, bro, just go look at the player super. He's one of the most fucking boring, basic bitch players to ever play in the history of the LEC. He's just like, if you looked in the dictionary next to like, what is a 7 out of 10 LEC ADC, it'd just be his fucking face with C super reference. But I'll tell you what, all that shit talk on the mic has fucking made his personality 10 times more interesting. Like the joke is for real, actual real world-class ADCs from like Korea have talked about this guy in interviews. Like, that would have never happened if you only played the game. No, I agree. You have to have the personalities too. You gotta sell it, you know.
Yeah, but I think it's also org's responsibilities to like make it so, you know, like
agreed.
Like why is there no one like teaching players how to like be a certain way or something? Like you don't have to be yourself. You just have to be entertaining. Like it doesn't matter how you do it, you know. Like I wish someone had told me this when I was a player. I would have kind of gone off
sure
or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's like I mean, just like say anything, you know, like just kind of like create a brand for yourself, and that's like the only way that you're really going to survive in esports, because there's a lot of players that are really bad and get really good spots just because they have a brand.
Absolutely.
So yeah, this I mean, it's a whole other discussion.
Yeah, it's all good. Yeah. Right, we'll transition then, because actually my good point ties into the homestand, because it's going to be about a team. I'm the one who's going to talk about League of Legends, not weird, abstract fucking tangents. Okay, it's just opposite day or something. Okay, so I actually want to say, are you ready? I'm going to do what Peter did. I have to be careful which weeks I do this. So finally, I can do this. Do you know what? Are you ready? This is going to blow your mind, Peter. My good point, MKOI. Just the whole team.
Wow.
The whole team, bro. It's not even just like, that guy's good, but what the fuck's the Midland? No, believe it or not, and I do think part of it was a function of this homestand, by the way. Mate, forget GX, because I don't believe that's real. Like, that will I think we're going to like come back to reality on that one. Splash Caller. The MKOI one, though, here's what's cool about that is, one, they are obviously going to be like a playoff team, etc. But this team actually looked like they had something under pressure. Like, they looked way better. And look, obviously it was touch and go on that Fnatic series, but spoiler, Fnatic's probably just the best team in the LEC right now. It's not even a shame to, but almost lose to them. And in fact, you didn't. You did win. You did technically win the game. So I actually thought, if you were MKOI and you're an MKOI fan, there's been weeks this year where you've been, this is great. There's been weeks where you're like, there's no hope. Mate, that would give me a lot of hope if I saw the way they played in the live environment like that. that. And by the way, against some big name opposition too. Remember, the most underrated detail about playing live, in my opinion, when you have the home crowd, because people never consider this. They only look at the positive. Is, bro, do you know how embarrassing it is if you lose and get shit on? Like, imagine if you just got 2-0 clapped to you, whatever. That feeling would be the worst ever, where the crowd's all silent or they boo you or something like that. There's pressure on both sides, even if you're the home team. So I actually thought they responded really well. Like unironically, this was probably the best week of MKOI I've seen this whole fucking split. It looked dope. What do you think, Dan? You vibing with Koi?
I like it. I also have to say that it's easy to play under pressure when people like you.
Okay.
So that's also like a whole different thing, because like people have been praising MKOI, and I think they have a lot of like Spanish fans. It's also good to be a team from a country, because then you automatically like absorb all those fans, which is like nice, you know. So it's also like good, like you go on stage, the pressure's already less because you've already gotten like 15 messages on your Twitter like, hey, good luck, you're so good. So I mean, I've had this too, you know, like you go on LEC first game, I was zero nervous because like all the French fans are like, yeah, you can do this. I'm like, okay, yeah, I guess I can, you know. Didn't think I could, but I guess if other people tell me, so like that's the first. But yeah, I think that's just the power of just like 5 people that like each other, and like having fans, and just a well-run org, and like good coaches, and yeah, it's just yeah, I mean, it's just I think it's just a product of just like everything else just going well. Yeah.
You know, I mean, I was watching the series. I remember your point last week, Thorin. You said like this Elioya has to step up this week, and holy fuck, he stepped up this
week.
Killed it,
like,
yeah. He was actually played out of his mind this week, and you know, it's not unusual to see Jojo and Mirwin. Jojo and Mirwin are both massive big game players, right? They're not quite the humanoid level of like he only lives for the big games, but like they really, really love the crowd. You could see Mirwin's voice comms. He's like almost Brazilian, like, you know, standing up, flaming Oscar, you know, whenever he gets like I mean, I'm gonna say solo kill, but no, he got like chain ganked by Elioya, but he's still stepping up. He's still flaming Oscar, who's his friend, you know, like across the stage, you know. Yeah, I thought it was really clear that those two guys stepped up. It's also clear that they can sometimes be a bit chaotic, because clearly the adrenaline got to them in a good way, but also a bad way. I mean, like Jojo had a Silas game where it was a bad Silas game. He had no ults to take except for Renata. But I think his team comp, like, yeah, it wasn't even like Renata ult was better for the enemy team than his team, and he had no other ults that he could take that were that good on Silas. Then he buys. Like, he spends 2.6k on elixirs and like 2k on pink woods.
Oh my god! I saw that screenshot. I thought it was troll, by the way.
No.
Yeah, I mean, he had 3 items, and a needlessly large rod in the end of a 50-minute game or something, right? I mean, it was classic. No, like, I mean, this is clearly not something that happens in a...
No.
Like, if this happens in a scrim as a coach, you pause the game and you'd be like, what the fuck are you doing? Go and farm. You know, I mean, they were funneling Tristana. So I kind of, like, it was very clear from like 15 minutes to 25 minutes. Like, Super made a couple of like mistakes early. He got caught on one of his bases because he was like looking at the shop and not looking at the mini map. So enemy, I think it was against Fnatic. So Mickey got to pick him when he was like recalling in a bush that he should have seen Mickey walking up to him, but he was clearly just looking at the shop, right? So he got behind early, and then they needed to hard funnel him. So Jojo was already in the mindset of, I've got to give up some farm so our Tristana can get back in the game. But then he never broke that mindset until like 35 minutes, when he's like so far behind and he's already bought all of these elixirs. So like, I mean, there were some good games and some bad games from all of the players, but the important thing is that they were able to, they fed off the adrenaline, but now they need to, like, for playoffs, they need to not go too far, you know, not get carried away. And I think we'll see how that goes. The only one who I felt was like, I thought everyone on that team overperformed except Super. I think Super was just like constant. So maybe, I don't know his personality so well, but maybe he's not the type of guy who like feeds off a crowd, you know. Maybe
he seems like a pretty consistent player, mate. Like I said, exactly, he just plays the same either way, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But the other 4 were like really, really feeling it. So sorry to interrupt that.
It's all good. Do you have any more points, Dan?
like a bad point?
No. I mean, if you had more on this topic, you want to say.
Because it looked like you wanted to say something.
Yeah, did you have something more about this topic you want to jump in on?
No, it's just like Jojo Pin Silas, like his items. Like Loki, I think in game he was kind of just thinking like I'm gonna be useless anyway, so at least I'm gonna try and like just buy as many pink words, just full utility bot, try and get as many power spikes as possible, and then like worst case I can protest my pick to my coach afterwards, you know. So might have been a little bit of protest, but I mean this guy probably knows what he's doing, right? Like it's actually a really really good player. So you know, like I just have a bit of a that's a shaky. I just have a bit of a mindset of like if a player is better than you, then you know just it's fine, you know.
Okay.
Just let him do what he does.
And I will say, just like let's just say there's a famous example I once outed of this. You also can then just be petty and then turn to your coach and, but coach, you're always telling us to buy pink wards.
No, this always happens. This
you know,
always happens after a game. Like Peter Dun probably knows. Like first thing, you know, after a game, if something goes bad, it's like you drop your ego to absolute zero. You just tank whatever the players like say to you. It's always something about like draft that's like bad, and you're like, yeah, whatever, it's fine.
Okay.
And then it's always like, oh, I didn't like this pick, or like this wasn't prepared enough. And even though some of that might be true, you know, you just tank it, and then you're like, whether it's true or not, I'm just gonna like just full tank it. And then the players are always right at the start. I don't know if you think about that as well, Peter, but it's just
like, so sometimes I've had a player come up to me after the game and said this pick was garbage, and I'm like thinking, you literally told me to pick that for you on stage. Right. I wanted the other pick. You told me not to pick the other pick. But at the end of the game, you're like, you're definitely correct. You're definitely correct. Like I should have. Yeah. Okay. I don't know what came over me on stage. Like, how could I possibly pick this pick? Like, oh yeah, it was just so stupid. Like, yeah, you're right. And then, but in my mind, I'm thinking, holy fuck, I know you were the one who told me to do it, and I'm going home right now, and I'm going to listen to the voice comms, and then I'm going to keep me sane. You know, like.
Yeah. It's That's just a little bit of a coach rant, you know. It's fine.
Yeah, it's all good. Right, here's the thing. Soon it will be Father's Day. By the way, get ready. This is going to be some of the most unique advertising you've ever seen. Maybe not even advisable. Soon it's going to be Father's Day. And being as you are watching an esports podcast, not even just an esport, a nerdy esports podcast about one region, discussing like teams in there in the meta context. Let's be real. You're probably a disappointment to your father. But I'll tell you what, you could start to turn around that culture today by actually not disappointing him. You could buy him a wonderful gift for Father's Day. You could buy him some Raycon everyday earbuds. And then every day he will actually not be disappointed, but in fact enjoy the thoughtful gift you have bought him. Because the thing about the Raycon earbuds, if you don't know, is they have 32-hour battery life, which is insane. It means you don't even have to charge them every day. So if he's a boomer like me, he just remember to put things on charge because in his day everything was wired and didn't have whatever, then that's fine. It's taking care of that for him. And also obviously they have that thing where you put them inside the case, etc. It's all lovely and neat, etc. If he doesn't have time to charge for the full 32 hours, by the way, 10 minutes worth of charge also gets you 90 minutes of battery. So if you have to travel and do like an hour trip, so actually the modern day it's super easy, you just need 10 minutes to charge it up. They have the active noise cancellation, so obviously you can put that on, and while you're talking and whittering on about some bollocks or watching something on TV, you can still be enjoying his nice serene environment. Means also you could be listening to a podcast or something like that while other things are going on. As the thing where you can press the button and you can hear what people are saying. It's actually mega super easy. It's really intuitive, by the way. It's not complicated at all. They come in a million different colours. I don't know what your dad's favourite colour is. You tell me. I'm a boomer, so I just pick black. I just don't even care. But whatever, they do have all the colours out there. You can pick all different colours. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Use them in the gym, use them at work, where he's working, earning all that money that you then waste on a PC and just play video games and let his bloodline die out rather than ever actually do something with your life. But you could at least buy him some decent fucking headphones, couldn't you? Can't you just get him some, at least do that. At least do that. So if you want to follow my definitely advisable marketing strategy, maybe go to buyraycon.com/league show. It's on the screen, all one word, league show, to get 15% off site-wide. So everything on the site, by the way, not just the specific ones I'm talking about. So that is 15% off site-wide at buyraycon.com/league show. Buyraycon.com/league show. They do tell you to keep repeating on that. I haven't just got dementia or had a stroke while I was doing that. So anyway, shout out to Raycon. Shout out to anyone who buys those. Shout out to the dads, the good, the bad, and the ugly. The dads. Anyway, I tried to do some sort of branding thing with our theme or whatever. We're spitballing. It's all good. Now we're going to go to the bad section of the show. So, Dan, what is bad about the LEC right now?
That players have too much power and sometimes ruining projects.
I do appreciate what an insane fucking coach bait topic this is. Well, okay, hit me with it, Coach Dan, as to why players.
No.
Hit me with it. Come on.
This is even me when I was a player.
Oh wow! Right.
You know?
Okay.
So like, I mean, like even then I do like that entire like Misfits thing. I'm not gonna name any names because I want to stay intact. But I remember that at the end it was like such a shit show, and you would just have to like walk around the room and just look at like if you were to like look at people's Discord messages and like you can see what conversations are open. You know,
right?
Owner, vice president, coaches weren't even on there. It's just like executives of the company, you know, and then you're like, well. First of all, I know the coaches are fired because no one's talking to the coaches anymore, you know. And the players are all trying to like save their own hide, and then people are already trying to network with players from like other teams, you know, like upset from Origins being messaged and like all this stuff, and you're just like, well, where's this really going? Like, why is the player building the roster, you know? And I heard some rumors about like stuff like that happening in Fnatic this year as well,
right?
And or like the previous year, and like some players are just like so big in like an org that they're just like, oh, I'm gonna build this, and you know, like just like friends and like that's like. I mean, in some other teams, like, oh, I'm not joining unless this guy joins. So I really, really want this guy. Then if the coach is like not capable and like the owner doesn't really care, then you're just gonna, you know, you're kind of just going into this kind of like, it's called cesspit of just, you know, like players and like friends and like supposed recommendations, and then it just all turns into like, yeah, whatever. But this usually happens in like the worst orgs that don't have capable people up there. So yeah. That's my take.
I cannot imagine a world where such things could possibly happen. You know, like a world where a player who's playing really, really well.
Yeah. Listen, the idea that a star player could say over the team, Peter, is an incredibly heretical idea.
Yeah, I can't imagine a world where that could possibly happen. No, that's all I'm going to say.
What sort of evil geniuses would be involved in such an event?
I plead the fifth. I plead the fifth on this one.
Okay.
But isn't it weird that if you have like, let's say Mourinho back in the day in like Real Madrid, right? If Mourinho says Cristiano Ronaldo's not playing, Cristiano Ronaldo's just not playing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
But it's like here, like I mean, we had some things where we. Okay, actually, yeah, sure. Like that was like a org we were in, and we wanted to like get rid of a player, and then management's just, and then you just can't. You know, it's just like okay, my bad. I'll just do the best with it, like whatever you can. And just players have so much power because some players are the reasons why sponsorships are there.
Yeah.
You know, some players like so just makes certain things difficult and stuff, definitely.
So I will say, okay, let me think. I will say I agree with you. I think it's the absolute worst when the season isn't over. Like if you do this in the off season, it's one thing, right? But if it's week 9 of the season and we're just going into playoffs, or worse, like the worst experience I've ever had as a coach in my career is in the middle of playoffs, one of my players decided they didn't want to play with somebody else on the team and started running it down in scrims every single game until he got his way. Like he literally, we're not even like between regular season and playoffs. We've played playoff series and like Worlds is on the line and he just decides, I've had it. I'm not playing with this player anymore. I'm going to run it down in scrims until you make the roster changes that I demand. And obviously, this player wasn't on the team next split. But I mean, like for me, that is as a coach, there's literally nothing you can do there, right? Yes. Like I mean, so what I would say is, yes, it happens. I would say that. The teams that I like, again, I said a lot of nice things about Adam from Splice, but one thing I will say from him is this happened on Splice, and there are team owners who won't even mention it to the coaches. Like sometimes there's different levels, right? There's the team owner says nothing to the coaches. He or they make a decision, and you're just not informed about it. That's the worst. Next is an owner will get that information. He will come and say to you, this player makes this, insists on this. We have to go with this way. There's no other way. That's not as bad, but at least you're not blindsided. incidentally, I think this happens in conventional sports a lot as well. Both of those two things. Next level is a player will make a protest, and then the ownership will come. Will come and we'll say we need to do this. Is there anything that can be done? And I would say that one thing that Adam did is like a player came and said this, and he said, "Now's not the time to talk about it. Go and talk to Peter, and go and talk to Peter until and yeah, I back whatever they say, going. Right? And that is, I think it really depends a lot on you."
Yeah, I mean, there's just been multiple of these situations throughout my entire career. It happens in every single org. If it happens in season, I've not had that happen unless it's the last 2 weeks. So lucky for me, that's not something I realized. But it's just like it's just a political nightmare at that point.
I actually completely agree with this. And the reason why goes like this. I think the distinction people fail to make, including big name players, is they think that if you say players have too much power, you're saying players should have no influence and no opinion. And it's like, no. I'll give you the very concise version. It goes like this. I want my star players and my big name players. In fact, most players, I want you to have an opinion, but I don't want to hear any ultimatums. I don't want you taking over the coaching job or the GM job. That's the part I agree with. Like, put it this way, Peter, in the example you're talking about, where a player, by the way, this might even be like my best player or the captain or something. Say a player decides like, I don't want to play with this person, so I'm going to run it down, right? I now know one thing for certain in this offseason. I don't know yet whether he can play or not, but you can never play for my team again because you've just taken over the job of the coach and the GM. Like, that can never happen. I don't care, by the way. This is one of the reasons I did that interview with Peter. I don't care if you are Perks. Mate, you can win 1 million championships. You can never then take over and fuck up a different team that isn't the one you won the championships on because you've decided you know everything about. Like, that isn't the way this can ever work. Like, the coach, one thing I'm very clear about always in esports is I hate when I know that the general manager or the coach didn't get to make the choice, but he gets all the blame for it going wrong. I hate that so much. If he made the choice and he really did choose that player or choose that coach or choose this up, then he fails, then I'm totally at peace with it because now I know that some of the things he did contributed to the failure or the success. But I hate it when the player essentially like does it. Like, it's not least because actually, as I just alluded to there, it might never be known by the public. So one of the worst parts about this too is you can have a player who's masterful at doing this and then they get away with it in the public's eyes too. And the public thinks they're the hero, they're the victim. And you're like, no, that was the guy fucking it all up. So I agree. I actually do think players are way out of control, even though I do totally get why they themselves should want to have an opinion. Like, they don't want to sit and be on a bad team or play with a bad player. But I would just phrase it that way. If you're a player, no matter how legendary you are, just think of it this way as like, coach, I'm giving my opinion. I'm not telling you have to do this. Because I think the latter is just antisocial behaviour. I don't think any successful team can survive the latter.
Yeah, and to be clear, the guy who was running it down in playoffs was not Perks.
No.
Perks did other things. Yes. Perks did other things, yes. But in playoffs he was like perfect teammate, right?
Yes.
But like the final thing I just tangent on that is that you want your players to contribute as well, right? Like if I go to AD carry, we decided we're replacing support, or I go to support and we're replacing AD carry, I want the support to have a short list of players they want to play with, right? Whereas like sometimes they'll just say, "Oh, just sign whoever," and then 2 months later turn around to you and say, "Oh, I didn't want this guy." Well, maybe you should have given me some options, right? So yeah, but obviously I take Dan's point. I just wanted to be really clear.
No, that's good.
The guy who did that it's not public, but yeah, that is the worst I've experienced in my life.
I mean, it's good for players to be opinionated, but it's also good for the people that are hired to do the job to do their job right.
Absolutely.
I guess it happens even in basketball because he's called like GM James,
sure,
LeBron James or something.
Sure.
So like I guess it even happens in like those skill like organizations. So why is it not happening in League of Legends? It's always going to happen. It's just like depends on the scale, because sometimes you like look at the team and you're like, wait, why is there 7 Polish people in this org all of a sudden? Like what? And then you look at the GM, it's like, that looks a bit suspect. So yeah, that's all I'm gonna say.
Right, Dan actually had to go and fittingly do real coaching and actually talk about the episode thematically. So it means, unfortunately, we had to cut his section essentially halfway through the show because we were just up to the bad point. We were about to go to Peter's point. So what we thought we'd do, though, is, because Peter is obviously a completionist, he didn't want to just end the episode there. He's actually a sucker for punishment. He wanted to do more and still do our points anyway, because obviously in theory, we have like my ugly point and his bad and ugly point. So let's do it anyway, Peter, because to be fair, though, I will say that is the function of these shows, which is, even though I actually thought that was a very interesting discussion, by the way, that would have been a banger, like some of the insight or narrative wake segment back in the day. The problem is, I do think for this type of show, a lot of people do watch these shows almost like as an omnibus if they don't watch every game or they want like different talk. So I think the thing is, especially after an exciting winner, the people want to know what we think about Fnatic and Carmine Corp and G2, of course. So, okay, what do you want to be for your, what is your bad?
Yeah, so my negative point is G2, right? So we kind of hinted at it earlier. Like, they really, really struggled in this stand, this homestand. Sure, there's a lot of like discomfort, but G2 historically in org, they would feed off the crowd, right? And definitely, like, there were times where Caps was making really good individual outplays. There were times when Hansama was making really good individual outplays. But let's be clear, like, Skewmond had some really, really rough decision making, especially his Jarvan game. He was going in without the support of his team. Like, the jungle support looked out of sorts. And I think whereas for both of their series were still close. Like, it's not the sky is falling. It's not like G2 are going to, miss playoffs or something like this. But it's very telling that that when the pressure came down, Noah stepped up for GX. Noah is somebody who I've criticized for not playing well under pressure. Maybe the homestand really helped him. Actually, maybe that really helped him, gave him some confidence. He stepped up in the game, and then Mickey stepped up in the game 3 against G2 Fnatic. Mickey was like literally 1v9 that entire game. Like, he was he was so crazy in that game. But nobody from G2 stepped up, and there were just a few more synergistic issues between jungle support and the rest of the team, which raised slight concerns for me. And when I say slight concerns, I don't mean miss playoffs. I mean, like, 2 teams go to MSI, and the way G2 are playing right now, they're not going to MSI, right? So,
sure.
So yeah, that's what I saw from this homestand.
No, by the way, I'll touch on the last thing you said first. As of right now, if someone put a gun to your head, I think anyone sane would have to pick Carmine Corp and Fnatic, or maybe even MKOI. Like, I'm with you, Peter. Right now, from what you've seen from G2, I can't pick them because, first of all, I'll tell you one thing I am worried about with them is that already, actually, their ceiling was, with this roster, never looked as crazy as with the last rosters in the past years. Like, they don't actually blow people out the server like they used to. They used to actually run all over people with some of those Hansama demon lanes, and when Caps was on his peak, At the moment, actually, none of their players, quite frankly, are particularly smurfing from their roles. In fact, the funny thing was, the one person who was actually looking really good in the regular season before this homestand was Skewmond. It's the guy that everyone criticised from the finals. So I'm with you. If you look at the other squads, they all have highs and lows, but they all have like things that, again, like they're very strong flavour. G2's a little bit too like a bit beige for me, mate. I'm a bit concerned, actually.
Yeah, and this was the big thing. Like, Mickey is somebody who has very high highs, and he had lows on G2. But the games where he had his high highs, G2 would like beat you in 22 minutes, right?
Yeah, they're one of the best teams in the world for real, yeah.
But the games where he had his lows, like, G2 would be behind, but they would like be able to play from behind. It wasn't like they were 100%, you were 100% going to win, right? Like if you had the lead, because G2 would do lots of annoying things to make it really hard to close the game. But here, like, all of their games now, they're much more stable team, but yeah, they're not blowing the teams out. And every single game that they play, they have to earn their win. And in a sense, this kills you over the course of a 5-game series where every game is close and you have to be super focused, really tires you out by the end of the series, right? It doesn't matter how good your mental prep is, but if your games are like 20 minutes one way, 20 minutes the other way, like, you're always fresh, right? And I think that's a concern to me. So we'll see what they do to fix it.
And this does show as well, to tie into the first point, how when you recruit players, you yourself have to be cognizant of your team culture. Because I'll tell you what, one of the things about all the past eras of G2 is they always looked also like players who would always show up in the big pressure game and show up when they have the crowd against them. And this team actually looks way more fragile mentally, mate. Like even some of the more veteran players, they're not, this is where people don't get it. Like these players have big personalities in the game and in the league, but they're not like captain figures to me. Like here's the thing, I don't particularly see like Caps and BrokenBlade as the guy who put their arm around your shoulder and you'd say, hey, don't worry, kid. Like they're not really that side of a guy actually. Like that was more like the Yankoses of the past or people in that vein, you know. So that is something I agree with you. I'm just a little bit concerned generally for G2. I know what you mean though. Put it this way. I'm not putting all the markers to the bottom and we're at DEFCON 1 and it's the end of the world and it's like fucking... No, their big problem, like you framed it best, is there's only 2 spots for MSI and we're now in a world where we've already said on past episodes, it's really competitive at the top of LEC. As of right now, you wouldn't pick them to go, mate. They wouldn't be the team... As of right now, if I had to bet, I'd guess they come third. And they just don't make it and they're not the team that go. So, and I do think this actually did... And also, here's the other thing as well. This homestand is one of the reasons why I actually think it's good that they might not go. I'd rather see the teams with the super... Like, I'd rather see Carl and Corp try and team fight and Fnatic try and accelerate the game. Like, those at least, if I'm trying to shadow box, what could work against, like, an LEC team, an LPL team or an LCK team, that has a way better chance than G2 going in there and being, like, a mid-table LCK team that just gets clapped when the jungler doesn't hold up under pressure or something like. I'd rather have the highs of the other teams. I'd gamble on that, you know.
Yeah, it's interesting because when they built this roster, I didn't actually foresee this either, right? Like,
no, of course not.
Now that I've seen them for 4 months, it makes more sense because they brought in Skumond, who was more stable than Yike, and Labrov, who was more stable than Mickey. But you lost the highs, and maybe I should have spotted this earlier. But yeah, it's a concern. I will say though, how smug and how happy must Giloto be today? like this week,
sure.
He didn't say. I don't think he said anything on Twitter, which is probably.
I don't think he popped off. No.
Yeah, but like he's somewhere behind the scenes he's rubbing his hands, he's thinking about this thing. But yeah, I just thought that watching the series.
Yeah, and I'll just put this out there if people don't know, because I obviously love to do that thing where I'm simultaneously an esports boomer and like a white guy from England, but I also like, for some bizarre reason, like hip hop culture, Peter. So if people don't know, there's actually a term in hip hop which is also so genius. I brought this up in the past, but people will forget it. It would be so perfect if G2 ends up being some sort of studio stage chokers, which is in hip hop. If you're the rapper who pretends on your raps that you're like selling drugs and killing people, but you're actually not. You're not even someone with a criminal background. You're just a normal guy who does it as like an act. They call you a studio gangster because the idea is you're only a gangster in the studio. Mate, that's G2 right there. They should be the studio guy, because mate, I tell you what, in the studio they're unfucking beatable. When they put like 300 Spanish people like boom, they collapse instantly somehow, just all over in it. What a life, what a world. Don't worry though, I've saved 1 point of the G2 criticism because one of mine's going to come later in the ugly. So anyway, let's go to my bad point. My bad point is going to be this. It's the way that the ending of the third game of Fnatic and MKOI went, Peter. Specifically if you're in Fnatic. Because, bro, there is something crazy about this Fnatic roster where if people notice, obviously I'm mad biased. They have players I like. I'm also very biased in general, by the way, to people who have very high skill expression. I just find it one of the most entertaining things to watch in the game. And people who, like, I like people who have crazy knockout power and could, they could even like trip over and win a game against a Korean team or something. I don't like the ones that have to like struggle and strain and and then maybe you just lost by that one. No. So as a result, right, I want so desperately to just talk mad shit about how Fnatic's the best team, and they actually are. Like if I actually look week to week, they are. But the way they lost that game right there, Peter, is why nobody is willing to actually put their balls on the table with Fnatic, because there's something about this roster where you feel like that can happen. Like anytime it's like right on the wire, you just feel they're going to lose somehow. You know what I mean? Like they will just find a way to lose, because that was another. I know there's been a bunch of these recently. If people don't know, there was the couple of there's been one in like every region now. There was one in like the fucking LCK. There was the D+ against whatever it was, T1 series that was like this. There was the one in the LPL. I think it was IG against fucking, I can't remember now. It was against maybe Weibo. I can't remember. They had JDG maybe. That's it. IG, JDG had a third game. I will say, I always have sympathy for players whenever it's the like, just hit the Nexus, because it's never just hit the Nexus. It's like, do I hit the Nexus and die and not get the thing? Or do I try and fight them and then still get the hit? So it is always really hard to calculate that. But bro, the way they lost that, like, that's got to be one of the craziest sucker punches you can have to the gut, because you go from like winning to just losing immediately. And unfortunately, the reason why I put this as my bad is, that's the thing I worry about with Fnatic, bro. It's nothing to do with skill. It's not even like how the players play together. I just worry that they have that tiny bit of mental fragility that if they break, yeah, it's hard to have faith in them, if you know what I mean, Peter.
Yeah, I mean, also like Humanoid was dead for 60 seconds.
It was crazy, wasn't it?
Like, I mean, which is sad. I have one caveat though, which is that I've seen teams like this collapse the next day after a series like this, and they recovered well for the
That's true.
day.
Yeah, they beat G2. Yeah,
G2, and it's basically one of Humanoid's, like, he was on Aurelion Sol game 3, he was just like smurfing the entire game. You know, you then go and see Upset on the desk, you know, he's happy to joke about it, you know, he's like, oh, you know, I can forgive Mickey for this, and then they asked about, I'll defend Humanoid for his performance yesterday, and he's like, nope, the decision's already been made, 25 to life, you know. And the fact that they could joke about this, and seeing Upset in particular, who's somebody who's really not somebody who does this kind of stuff, right, joke about it, gives me hope. And we'll see. I mean, I'm still a little bit worried, like you said, mainly because of their playoffs last split, sorry. But yeah, definitely the fact that they could joke about it the next day. I mean, obviously they'd already locked playoffs as well, but that's a good thing, I would say.
Okay, what is your ugly point then?
Okay, my ugly point. So obviously, like, I could say ugly points about, you know, about all kinds of other players that I've said bad things about before, but actually I'm going to go and say ugly point about one of the players which I really, really like. So I'm sure he'll take this in good in the spirit that it's meant, but basically Nisqy, like, super ran it down in like that series. He had one of the worst Nico games I've ever seen in my life, and then he goes and hits the five-man ult at the end. Everyone has flash up, nobody flashes. He wins the game, he gets player of the series, and I'm just sitting there thinking, holy moly, like, what like, I'm surprised that Nisqy is this bad at Nico, because Nico was a mid lane champ, so you would expect him to be able to play this. And I mean, even his teammates, even he at the end of this game was joking about it. And like, I think I heard the LEC mic check, and when they locked in Nico, Kazi was even joking about it before the game. He's like, "Oh no, not Nico." But yeah, you know, like, I don't know whether I should praise him for having the mental fortitude to keep trying, because he definitely ran it down 5 times. So, you know, run it down the 6th time, go and flip it, or not. But basically, they were down 7k gold in that game. They ended the game like 2.5k gold down, despite wiping all the towers in mid lane. So yeah, I don't know. Like, I have a soft spot for Vitality. Obviously, Nisqy's there, Kazi's there. I like Nak a lot. I like Linkus a lot. Like, I like Mac a lot, Mac and Pad. But I mean, they got away with one this week, and Nisqy got away with one, and he's getting a lot of criticism I don't think he deserves, but he definitely deserves criticism for this game. And the fact that he got player of the series is really, really funny. I think it's an ironic player of the series.
No, it was a meme, surely. I know what you mean. The reason it has to be a meme is because if not, then everyone who votes is a pleb. Because, like, just making one move at the end of the game that's good doesn't save the fucking, like, in that scenario, you're the reason you had to make a game-saving play. I know. Also, by the way, this is where people, like, do really weird groupings of players, because I saw loads of the people who were commenting on this game were like, classic Nisqy. It's like, no, this is actually the opposite of what Nisqy does. Normally, you know, I made that joke on the past season about, like, the problem if you do 7 things right, Peter, but then you do 1 wrong, where I gave that analogy about going for the date with the girl and you shit yourself at the end. Normally, Nisqy's doing that. He normally does, like, the 7 good. I would joke on some of the insight is he always makes the game losing play right after he makes the game winning play. That's who Nisqy used to be. He did the opposite here, mate. The joke was he actually was doing the Hillsang here. He was doing the Hillsang you int to win, and at the end somehow he won. Like, but I know what you mean, Peter. Here's the thing: if he hadn't have pulled off that last play, this would be a very different show this week, wouldn't it? Like, fucking hell, that was bad, mate. That was bad.
It was rough, but I mean, again, he's adapting to being a sport. It's not that easy to switch to a new role, but yeah, like, he's not afraid to look stupid. Okay. That's what I would say. And yeah, he definitely. They won, so that's all that matters. But that's mega important. Like, that win Like,
Oh, yeah.
gives Vitality a really good shot for playoffs. And like, if they lose, I think Vitality are basically fucked for playoffs. So yeah. So I'm just having a look at the table. Yeah, if they'd lost, BDS would have been 4 wins. Yeah, basically, if they'd lost that game, they would have been on 2 wins. 5 teams would have been on 4 wins, and G2 would have been 6th on 3 wins.
Also,
With,
two things. One, fucking hell, Kazi has a cursed career, bro. How does he get these supports? And then the other thing is, just for you alone, Peter, I will just point out this piece of trivia, because even though now we'd have to go back in time to make it work, you know, technically, they did themselves, Peter. They could have just promoted Stend.
Yep.
Imagine if they just promoted Stend into this roster now. Yep. Be a pretty good roster, right? It'd actually kind of low-key be cooking.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it was rough, but yeah, he's still there. And what I will say is that Kazi never hesitates. No matter this series, he didn't hesitate to follow any of Nisqy's engagement.
Yeah,
I mean, it meant that he died in stupid ways, right? But if you're not willing to go in on the engage that is bad, like, he didn't hesitate to go in on the final 7k goal down engage. And if he'd been late or if he'd hesitated on that, maybe they don't win the fight.
Yeah.
So, you know, the fact that he's chaining with his support is a good thing, because it means that you can come back from anything. And I think this will give Vitality confidence. I hope they fix it. I hope they do well, you know, but yeah, it makes me a bit nervous. But, you know, they played well and lost series. So at least this time they played badly and won. So, you know.
No, I agree, by the way. Kazi is just the definition of a ride or die player of the game. Because here's the thing, Peter. People are maybe used to, like, jungles and supports doing that, like going in with the other player. Bro, for like an AD carry, they are the player. My boy Upset would back out in some of these fights fucking before they even started, if you know what I mean. Like, those are normally really cynical players who don't want to fucking die for no reason. So I actually will always give props, because this even shows, by the way, it wasn't just Hillersan. Kazi just goes in, mate. He actually does what I wish here's another piece of advice for pro players. Make the mistake in the live game, fix it in the review. You can't fix it during the game. You can't call the play off during the game. Like, that doesn't work. Like, you got to just do it and then figure out the decision making next time to not make the bad decision is how you got to think about it. You got to do it in hindsight, you know.
He has the Jackie Love gene in him for sure.
There you go.
That's what I will say.
And also, mean joke here, something of a comparable at national record. But whatever. Because by the way, Jackie Love, I love him, but he is a crazy shot.
Jackie Love has a
he got carried for that one.
Least important player on that team.
He got carried for that one. He got carried for that one. That's like if Kazi had been on Prime G2, mate. I don't know if that counts. You know what I mean? I don't know if that counts. Right, my ugly point, so the last point of the show, I saved it until now, Peter. I intentionally didn't bring it up when you brought up G2. It's going to actually echo a point in the past, but I'm going to go more extreme. Mate, I'll tell you who actually, my faith was absolutely destroyed in that series. Is fucking BrokenBlade. Mate, I'm one of these people where people might know I was never a massive BrokenBlade fan. As in, when he was in TSM, I thought he was very good, but he wasn't like a god to me. I thought actually in G2, I do think, by the way, in G2, year on year until this year, I thought he was getting better. Like, I thought he did level up in international play. Domestically, he's always been very good. My problem was this, right, which is if you look at some of their past teams, first of all, the era of G2 he has played in is fucking Caps and Sama. Like, if you have that team, it is a mid and ADC team by definition. That's just the way you're going to play. By the way, almost every Hansama team is going to be a Hansama team. That's just the way it works. But that is the way it should be. That's the way everyone's bread is buttered when you join that team, when you coach that team. So my problem with BrokenBlade in past splits was, I think sometimes people did that thing of G2's the best team, so automatically you get to be the best top laner. Whereas there were times where I thought, like, Irrelevant's better than you, or other people are in the mix with you, etc. But I have to say, mate, this particular year, and especially now in this split, BrokenBlade has lost so much of his status. Like, the idea that he's just like the best top player in LEC, I think that's incredibly debatable right now. And the amount of people I've actually just flat out beat him who don't even have, like, this Lock guy has no status. This isn't some big name. Like, it's actually like kind of like rocking me a bit how badly some of these series are going. Even in some of the games they win, Peter just looks a bit average sometimes.
Who do you have as number one, Canna or?
I would have Canna number one personally. I think he's cracked, mate.
Makes sense. No, I think it's true. I think it's also that. So last split, he was able to be really creative. He had like picks that people weren't prepared for. He could play the Cho'Gath, which nobody else really seemed to be able to play, but also didn't seem to have forgotten what Cho'Gath as a champion actually did. And it seems like because he was able to just run over games. I think was it Munda? Was he or was it Skewman?
I think he played Munda, didn't he?
But Yeah, I can't remember where it was. They played a Mundo game. But definitely I remember like multiple Cho'Gath games because I've been coaching somebody on Cho'Gath recently. But like the it feels like this week and last week.
Oh, no, it was Skewmond on the document.
It was okay. Then it wasn't him, but definitely like the Cho'Gath games, he was just destroying people on Cho'Gath when nobody else in the world was kind of playing that champion. But it feels like this week, like against BDS last week, a lot of the thing about BrokenBlade is that he could be creative, but the thing which made him a really really good player is how consistently he would just beat you on the map, and like he would beat you by like inches, like 1,000 cuts. And the problem is that G2's discipline, like macro discipline, has just evaporated the last 2 weeks. They looked pretty good in the first 2 weeks of this split. I think he was definitely worse than last split, but the last 2 weeks, like he's been really really rough over the last few weeks. Like Caps has been rough too, but Caps like stepped it up. Like Caps has like games where he's kind of running it down a bit, but like games where he's in positions to hard carry. Like against Fnatic in the final game, he's like 4-0 Moriana. He's like not against Fnatic, against GX. He's 4-0 Moriana. He's in a position to carry, and they need to play around him. But I feel like BB, the thing which makes him such a dangerous player is his discipline, and it's kind of evaporated a bit, and that worries me going into playoffs. Like again, G2. Who did G2 have in their schedule? They have Vitality, SK, and KC. Okay, they should be able to get. They should be able. 5 wins guarantees you playoff. 4 wins guarantees you like a play into playoffs. So they should be able to get 5 wins. You'd expect them to beat Vitality and SK. But yeah, they have a homestand in 2 weeks. So the thing about G2, I think, is because obviously the teams who host the homestand get to choose who they invite, and obviously they're going to choose to invite G2 if they get the choice. Like it means that G2 don't get a break, right? So a lot of the teams, like certain teams, have a week off, right? So KC didn't play this week because they're not in the homestand.
Yep.
But G2 basically have 2 games this week, then they have 1 game next week, and then they have 2 games in the final week. And I think that they need to learn the lessons from this week and apply them in KC, because this was a loud crowd, but I don't know, but the KC crowd is going to be noisier, it's going to be larger, and they're going, they won't hesitate to boo you. Like Koi are going to be a little bit more polite is not the word, because they're not polite, right? But they're not going to like be incredibly hostile, right?
A bit more good-natured, maybe.
Yeah, they're going to be more good-natured, right? But Casey will not hesitate.
No.
Not like to the fan base there will not hesitate to like, they treat guest teams well, but they treat competitor teams really, really like brutally. And like this is something I wish that we still had Dan on, because obviously he's on Solari, who are one of the big rivals of KC and LFL. So there's a bit of spice there. But yeah, we'll see. They're lucky in that they will have more practice than any other team in a stadium in front of a live audience. So they get more chances to fix it. Whereas like a team like, let's say, Heretics or Rogue aren't going to make playoffs, but a team like Heretics won't get that option, that won't get that chance. So I have no idea. Like maybe Heretics are going to just collapse in playoffs with the rookies. Maybe they're not. But G2, it's an unfair advantage that G2 have, but in a sense, it's something that they've earned over the years for being champions, that they get this advantage, which is more live stage practice, right? So maybe they have more of a chance to fix it. But yeah, I worry that they're losing their discipline a bit as the season is progressing. That's not a good sign for sure.
There we go. We did do our points in the end anyway. Yep. We'll be back next week with a guest. Hopefully they'll be with us for the whole episode. See you then.
See you.